It's a lot of nonsense.
Idiots saying nonsense.
Enough of this nonsense. Nonsense! Nonsense!
Layers and layers of nonsense.
What is this nonsense?
Nonsense is everywhere, surrounding us like an invisible cloud.
Nonsense in the new way.
That is what is nonsense.
Every day they write articles on nonsense.
A little nonsense now and then, relished by the wisest.
Nonsense.
Hello and welcome to Nonsense, the podcast where no topic is off topic and where we attempt to make sense of the nonsensical world in which we currently find ourselves living. Today I'm joined by Jason Verbelli. He's a brilliant scientist, researcher, and pioneer in the fields of magnetism and free energy. Welcome, and thanks for taking the time to talk with me today.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you to everyone who's listening.
I kind of want to start out, for those of us out here who don't really know who you are, if you don't mind, if you could give us a little brief overview of who you are and what your past is and what you're doing today.
Sure. Well, my name is Jason Verbelli, and I consider myself an independent researcher. My focus is validating the claims of Professor John Searle and other exotic or unconventional technologies, and also the work of Dr. Edward Dowdy, which is credible challenges to relativity and Doppler shift theory and some very technical math. I'm very passionate about studying and applying these brilliant contributions of other people for the last 100 years that have been suppressed or under-acknowledged. And the past 14 years, I've dedicated myself to presenting this information that's not mentioned anywhere in the mainstream news or even many libraries. So I've always wanted to solve an ancient mystery or influence the world to think differently. And my dreams seem to be slowly becoming a reality. And I'm hoping that this work will eventually help provide future generations with freedoms beyond our comprehension. So I look in the opposite direction of where authority is pointing, and I tend to see things where other people don't initially. And then I wave my hands and try to simplify things to lay people so we can all understand it and then use it.
Awesome. You brought up John Searle. Could you give us a little bit of history of who he is and why his work is important for the work that you're doing today?
Absolutely. John Searle was a man who born in the late 30s, and he was working on this magnetic device, which he had dreams about since age 6 to about 12 years old. 6 years of reoccurring dreams, twice a year, about hopscotch squares, which he led to like Sudoku on steroids, hundreds and hundreds of pages of these mathematical formulas like Sudoku, but he called them the law of squares, and he used it like a calculator to determine the quantities of different materials to build this alternative energy device. And it is analogous to a hydroelectric dam on the quantum scale or on the subatomic scale. So this guy had dreams and then was a brilliant electrical engineer just as a prodigy, and was hired at the largest industrial electric plant that ran all of London. And while he was working there, he was making these crazy claims about this device he was dreaming about, and they told him to shut up, prove it, or get out. So he said he can't stop talking about it. He likes where he's working, so he'll use their resources to prove it. And over the course of many months, he had these engineers and factory workers help him machine these parts to the specifications that he desired. And they worked and worked and worked until they provided the results. He brought them home. He put them together and tested it out, and it just happened to work. And it worked so well that it powered the devices without being plugged into anything as normal. It would absorb the energy from around it and cool down to power the machines that he wanted: light bulbs, a cooker, and an iron.
Awesome.
But a byproduct of using this, every time he tried to use it practically as a generator, it would speed up, cool down, and it went to a breaking point where it lifted off of his workbench up to the ceiling.
Oh, wow.
And nobody taught him that wasn't supposed to happen. So he tried to grab it. His hands electrostatically froze to the unit. His landlady saw it, beat the device with a broom, poured hot water on his hands to get his hands off of it, and it broke a couple pieces, and it settled back down to the workbench like a magnet over a superconductor.
Oh, wow.
Just sort of settled down. Every time he tried to use this thing, it would try to get away from him. So it took years of machining and engineering to learn how to use this thing as a practical device. And he developed this technology to power his home and devices using this generator. And he did so from his dreams.
Wow, that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it's extraordinary claims. And it requires extraordinary evidence in order to substantiate. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, it takes extraordinary resources and funding. And so that's what we have been trying to do here in San Diego since 2010, is build up this research and development facility to validate these claims and put his words to the test, see if it's real. And everything that we have tested so far has happened to work out, electrical engineering-wise, machining. There have been no technological hurdles. The only thing is lack of funding to do more.
Cool. Yeah. So that brings me into my next question. Besides lack of funding, are there any other hurdles that you've come up against?
Not that everybody would think, man. I feel left out. Okay. I haven't had any men in black kicking in my door. No, I've had milk and cookies waiting for these people for years. Everything is stale and spoiled now. Nobody even gives us any attention because we're not a threat yet. So once we get past the initial financial hurdles, then we can produce a working prototype as John originally had. And then that would be the danger zone. Then we can maybe expect a knock at the door or some more hurdles. But at this point, it's just pure bureaucracy and regulations that are preventing the funding. No particular finger waving or saying we can't do that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I know there are a number of other kinetic or magnetic generator devices, such as the ones that are being explored by companies like Infinity Sav. What is it that makes that sets the SEG generator apart from devices like those?
Every other device is connected to something. A bearing, a shaft, has commutators, crankshafts, belts. Something is connecting the moving parts. But in John Searle's device, the moving parts don't touch anything. They act as frictionless magnetic bearings. So there's no wear and tear. And that makes for a unit that will last a lot longer. And price for price comparison, anybody would choose something that has no, moving parts that don't touch and has no wear over something that would wear over time. You need new bearings with the Infinity Sav, although I love what they are doing. And it reminds me of Muammar Yildiz and his magnetic device, which I initially, for years, thought, you can't just orient regular magnets in a way that will allow for, you get energy out of it, unless the magnets will deplete or something is a loss. because you cannot draw energy without something draining. And that would be either the magnetic field of the magnets over time, or something would have to lower. But the infinity salve seems to be doing a great job, and I can't wait to see more.
Cool. You mentioned the magnetism being depleted. Is that something that you would have an issue with the SEG generator as well, or no?
No. What depletes is the surrounding energy in the form of temperature.
Okay.
So all the energy around us is in chaos, is randomized electricity. It's in turbulence. It's disordered electricity, static, Brownian motion, all these words. So like what this device does is it orders it. So all of that energy in 3 dimensions clashing around is being lost and generating heat. The total amount of surrounding energy is the temperature. So heat and temperature are 2 different things. The energy has to come from somewhere. So when you draw energy from the surroundings, there's less chaos, there's less surrounding turbulence, which means the temperature has to lower in proportion. So that's where the energy comes from, is the surrounding environment, the thermal range. And in deep space, it would have to be built a lot larger in order to extract more energy, since there isn't as much in deep space. But here on Earth, there's plenty. So a tabletop device about 3 feet in diameter, weighing about 180 pounds, can supply enough energy for your entire house, about 15 kilowatts.
Oh, wow. What's the scalability of something like that? Are they stackable? Do you have to grow
Correct.
them? Okay.
Yeah, so you can stack them. So a 15 kilowatt stacked on top of a 15 kilowatt would equal 30 kilowatts. So it would be additive. And then you can scale it up. Instead of stacking individual units, you can increase the mass of one unit and have a megawatt unit, or however you design it. It's scalable.
Are there any issues that you would come across in regards to the materials involved in making the device?
Well, the only issue really is that China has a monopoly on neodymium and rare earth lanthanides, and that is what is used for the core of the device, which, again, it's analogous to the reservoir of a hydroelectric dam. The energy has to come from somewhere, and the energy has to be stored from somewhere. And then there has to be pressure on that energy. And there has to be acceleration of that energy. And then there has to be emission of that energy. So it's an entire cycle. And the materials used are very specific: neodymium, Teflon, a dielectric, which acts as the dam wall, and then the magnetic, which acts as the accelerator, like the rotors or the turbines themselves, and the copper acts as the emitter, like the ramjetting of the water out of the other side of the dam. And what happens to the water outside of a dam? It evaporates, goes back into the sky, precipitates, and rains back into the reservoir again to complete the cycle. And that is the similar thing that happens to the energy. Rather than a liquid media flowing through a hydroelectric dam, it's the internal kinetic energy of electrons themselves flowing as a media through the unit radially. So from the center out, like Saturn's rings. So the energy comes in at the poles in 3 dimensions and then out at 2 dimensions. So all of that energy that normally clashes in 3 dimensions is compressed and output in 2 dimensions as a flat sheet, a flat ring. So all of that energy that would be lost in 3 dimensions is compressed and focused like a laser beam on one plane.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And is it comes out in the shape of a toroidal field, would you say, or?
Correct, but 2 toroidal fields,
Okay.
the top of the equator and the bottom of the equator. The energy is ramjetted out at the equator, but then it splits, and some of it goes up, some of it goes down, and then recirculates back to the core. And then out at the equator and at the poles, out at the equator and at the poles, in a loop on the top and a loop at the bottom. Dual toroid.
That's really cool.
You know what? I have links. I have a link to a Google album where I have compiled like a couple hundred images and some animated images, so you can see what the heck I'm talking about here.
Awesome. Yeah, it'll be.
Do I want to put this in the chat here?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there you go. I think I did.
Yeah.
And there you go. So that will lead to an archive of some of the work that we are doing in the history of John Searle, which shows that he worked at this industrial electric plant, two of them, Midlands Electric Board and then British Rewind Electric Repairs Limited in the UK. And it's at that environment with all of the resources and multi-million-dollar infrastructure available. That's how he did it. He didn't build this thing on his kitchen table with refrigerator magnets. It's like absurd. No, he used the multi-million-dollar infrastructure of the largest electric plant that ran all of London. They were laughing at him because he was making outlandish claims about dreams and this energy device. So he used their resources because he was allowed to, and his off time and for months. And he achieved that, and it just happened to work. So that's it's not like we're doing this for the first time. We are rebuilding what he has already achieved. But most of everything was, destroyed. The same old stories with the free energy guys. Mm-hmm. So it's our duty to, work with what we have now and push forward, because the past is the past. We can't do anything about it. So we can only validate his claims now.
Continue to expand upon them.
Yeah. And if it didn't work out, I wouldn't be a part of it. I mean, I'm not, I sort of like, I'm a person who waves flags and points and laughs at frauds. And I want to make sure everybody knows who the hell is real and who's not. So I would not be working with somebody who is not genuine. And that's how I initially started this. I was like, I want to disprove this guy's claims. And the more I tried doing so, the more I validated what he was saying over and over and over and over for years. So it got to the point where I was like, okay, I got to dedicate myself to this until I see something that dismantles it all. And, over 14 years later now, we have, chemists and aerospace engineers and some heavy hitters who are part of the investors trying to make this thing happen and get off the ground. We should be getting support equal to SpaceX or NASA or something.
Yeah, I would think so.
It's crazy.
I feel like, there's the obvious reasons why that's probably not happening. The suppression of the technology has been going on for quite a long time. And I've always kind of saw Elon Musk and these other guys doing things as kind of like they let them do the things that they know aren't going to actually change the world. It's like little stepping stones.
Yeah, he's cool. I mean, he's invested in batteries and rockets for the next 25 years for, $100 billion contracts. So it doesn't matter what somebody presents to him. We even had associates a few years ago sit down with Elon Musk and his associates at a round table and tried to present some of this stuff in addition to some sort of circuitry that would improve the Tesla car to have 3 times the mileage on the same charge.
Oh, wow.
And the guy had it tested at raceways with some of the Tesla engineers, and they loved it. It worked. But when it went up the chain of command, they weren't interested. because they had already signed billion-dollar contracts and they couldn't go back on them. And it doesn't matter what you present. There's even an article says Elon Musk is sick of inventors pitching him the next big thing in batteries.
It's kind of ludicrous if you think about it. It's like if we're really gonna.
But he's doing his thing, and he's working with what works and is accepted now, and that's what makes money, and that's what that's what he's trying to do for his investors, is make them money based on what works.
Yeah. So how long do you think it would be before this kind of technology is going to be able to see the light of day? Do you have any sort of idea about that? Or
if we were to get full funding today, it would take about 18 months to 2 years to produce a fully working prototype.
Okay.
But that would be justification for mass production. And that mass production process would cost billions, just like it did for Tesla Motors. First you have the first Tesla car, and then you prove that prototype with the Tesla car, and that first car costs millions of dollars. But then you want to mass produce it. So you have to spend billions of dollars for a mass production facility, and then that lowers the cost of the car from millions to, 40,000. But in doing so, you have to have the funding to do the mass production.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you have to have justification for the investors. And that's what we're doing now, is the investors need justification for the big funding. And everybody's waiting for us to complete this prototype to power a light bulb or a house or whatever. But that's a $3 million program.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a financial paradox. Give us the machine, and then we will give you the funding to build it. What? No. No.
Well, and then as an investor too, it's essentially what you're trying to do is create a device that will eliminate a lot of the profits from their pockets.
Well, if you want to be dumb about it, but if you want to make money at every point along the way, you work with the infrastructure.
Okay.
Now you can couple with a solar turbine farm, put devices underneath the solar panels, and then they can sell the power. People don't need to know where the power is coming from, but the solar farm is paying you, and then they are distributing power at a lower rate to their customers. Same with a wind turbine farm, same with hydroelectric, because there's not always wind, there's not always sunlight, there's not always reliable rain, but these devices can produce reliable power, and you can work with the existing infrastructure, hiding it. People, what you do is you undersell and over-deliver. Claim that, hey, this solar panel can give you 15% more efficiency, but you have a device hidden underneath the solar panel, so when people use it, they find they get their whole house powered. Well, I thought you only said 15%. Well, geez, what a coincidence. Hey.
So do you see this? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, everybody else tries to oversell and underdeliver. So just try to do the opposite. Don't wave a flag. Just claim just a little bit, hide something spectacular, and then people will be surprised when they get more for their money.
Yeah. So then do you see this as being something that wouldn't necessarily be marketed to the everyday person, but more so like governments and cities and larger
initially? Yeah, okay. Because there's liability first. You can't just build something like this and sell it to the layperson. Okay, so let's say you sell something like that for $50,000, right? And then they sell it to China for $3 million. And they want to buy another one from you for $50,000. And then they sell another one for $3 million. That's not very good business for you, is it?
No, definitely not.
That's not a very good business plan. So you have to keep yourself from being obsolete and work with every step of the infrastructure until it is accepted. You can't just come out with something and sell things to people that will make other people obsolete and angry at you. You work with them, and you take maybe 5% over a few years of their consumers, and then you expand, and then you become so large that you can't be stopped, and then you flip the switch. But by
Makes
then,
sense.
everybody knows about you, and you're not a threat at each step.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I wanted to touch on a few other.
I feel good right now, so we got a little bit more time. So.
Okay, cool. Well, I'd love to, now that we kind of touched on the generator and what you've been doing with that, I'd love to kind of touch on a few other topics.
Cool.
And get your opinions on them, and
oh yeah,
kind of see what you think.
Let's do it.
Now, I'm not sure. Do magnetic waveforms have something to do with the SEG as well, or what is?
Yeah, it's the key to the whole technology.
Okay.
And that is that's the magnetization process imprints and superimposes magnetic fields on top of each other, and in rotation, it reproduces a waveform, like how a laser beam produces a standing wave. This produces a magnetic standing wave with the total amount of magnets in rotation together. It produces waves within waves that are rotating with each other all in the same direction together, and it helps to contribute to a Bose-Einstein condensate, and it also is the reason why there's a magnetic bearing.
Okay.
And it's a reason why the electrons will be focused at a specific wavelength at a given load, because the magnets are rotating, producing this wave, reproducing them, and remagnetizing the system at a constant because of the waveforms.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah, that's rad. I'd love to hear your thoughts too. I know you're a pretty big magnet nerd. I'd love to hear your thoughts on structured water and magnetized water.
Hell yeah. Well, I got to be specific. I speak fluent nerd. I might not be a nerd, but it's okay. You don't have to be a language to speak that language. It's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the structured water and the magnetized stuff and all the. What you getting at?
What's up?
Is that what you were getting at? The structured water and the magnetized water?
I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on it. Like what, and also for those people who don't know about it, to maybe explain a little bit about what structured water is and kind of the value of it.
Okay. Yeah. I was looking into the claims of so-called structured water, and what people are claiming is that the molecules of water, the H2O, the little Mickey Mouse ears, can be connected together like a chain link fence and can remain that way. But really that is like ice. That's not liquid water. Liquid water doesn't bond and remain that way. So skeptics over the years say structured water is nonsense. And it's bogus because you can't retain the structured state of the water molecules like that. And liquid doesn't ionize. You can't have negatively charged liquid. So skeptics have rightfully said that structured water is crap. But when you look at people like Dr. Gerald Pollack and the easy water and the fourth state of water, that is genuine, because they are dealing with an electrical state of potential next to a surface. So the surface of the naphtha, it's a specific material. It repels the water, or it attracts the water, and hydrophobic or hydrophilic, and the water that is directly on the surface is separates. So it's like there's a negative and a positive charge to the total water in relation to each other. Okay. But the difference between the structured water and all other claims is the bubbles that are in the water. All right. So all of these different devices like Dan Winter and Clayton Nolte and the fractal water, all of these devices are aerating the water, cascading the water, and churning it to make micro bubbles. And then they send the water in vortexes, which then collapse those bubbles even more. And what happens there is that the gases inside the bubbles become negatively charged. So it's not the water that's negatively charged, but rather it's the tiny bubbles in the water that are negatively charged. So skeptics are correct in saying that water cannot be negatively charged. Crap. But they are wrong in saying that there isn't a negative charge total, because it's the bubbles in the water that are a dissolved gas, because they're so tiny you can't see them, but they're contributing to an overall negative charge. So it's the gases in the water, not the water itself, unless you're talking about the very, very small separation between the hydrophilic and hydrophobic surfaces of water. But all of these devices are trying to churn the water and make microbubbles. And if you drink the water with the ionized bubbles before they dissipate, you can get the benefit. If you water plants with them, the plants can get the benefit. But the trick is to inject the specific type of gas that you want, and then you collapse the bubbles so that they remain. So you can have dissolved oxygen, and then they collapse to nanobubbles, and you can have super oxygenated water. You can do the same with ozone. You can soak oysters in it, and then you have super clean oysters with no risk of any disease. You can clean surfaces. No Rona. You can get rid of that Rona. It's not the water per se, but it's the gases that the water is hosting in it, and it's acting as a carrier. And the method that you use to churn the water can promote hydrogen ions and those small bubbles. And if you have magnets with that, then the ions will flow 90 degrees to those magnets, and they will align even more. But only for a very short time. But it is true.
Okay. What are some of the benefits of watering with this or drinking with this? Like, what would it actually do for a human or a plant?
It makes the root systems a lot more complex and large, which can extract nutrients from the soil more effectively, which then makes your food a lot more nutrient dense, taste better, makes flowers and stuff smell better, makes the plants healthier, more bug resistant, more drought resistant, more cold resistant. They can go a longer time without water, and it just seems to be a real benefit. Now apply that to a human. We'll just say it makes you feel good. You can't make any medical claims, because you can claim it for plants. They say, see what it does to a plant, imagine what it does to you. But you can't make specific claims for the human. But if you happen to drink it and you happen to feel better, well, what a coincidence. Yeah. But it can oxygenate your system more, because it's packed with more oxygen, with more dissolved oxygen, or even HHO, or you can do combinations of gases. And there's so much to do and benefit. It's really much about the gases in the water, more so than the water itself.
Okay. Well, thanks for clarifying that.
Oh, one other thing. These nanobubbles can also clean out algae blooms and clean out sewage and clean out bodies of water, like within hours, bringing it all to the surface. Okay, so like the nanobubbles are negatively charged, and there's the weight of the entire volume of water around it. So there's this tiny little bubble of negative within the surrounding volume of positives water. So it will be pushed to, and nanobubbles don't float to the surface. They're so small, they'd have zero buoyancy. So they can just remain at the bottom. So the nanobubbles can sink, and they will attach themselves to the most positive thing. So all these impurities at the bottom of the lake are positive, and these nanobubbles will electrostatically seek out positive impurities and latch themselves to it until a collective of bubbles are attached to that thing, and it rises to the surface. and then cleans it. And then you just skim off the top of the surface once all the muck forms at the surface, and you have a clean body of water.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier Dan Winter. How familiar are you with his work?
I was one of the first people to purchase his imploder nozzle, and back in like 2010.
Nice.
In fact, yeah, I've had conversations with him. I know him. I support his work. Not necessarily everything. You know, he talks about the black holes, which I'm not too fond of, but he does talk about them in a different way. But yeah, I love the guy. I love his work, but I don't agree with everything he says.
Cool. I know he's been exploring a little bit, I believe, getting into like binaural tones and these types of things.
Yeah, that's good.
I forget what it's called. There's a device that you can use for meditation that uses EEG waves that he has been exploring some stuff with that I thought was really fascinating.
The Rife frequency or the neurophone?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was going to be one of my next questions. Well, in regards to, I'm not exactly sure what the difference is between, so if you can clarify this for me, that'd be great. I have a few different terms. So I have scalar waves, biomagnetic therapy, and the Rife frequencies and bioresonance. And I'm curious if you could kind of clarify.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list of the topics too.
Okay, cool, perfect.
Yeah, I'm not into the whole scalar wave thing, even though Tom Bearden was. Scalar is a state. It's not a wave. Like the pressure in your room is scalar. Mm-hmm. And if you were to plot that pressure over the next month, you would see on a map, on a chart, you would see it rise and fall a little bit from the daytime and the nighttime. You would see that wave on the chart of that scalar state. That would be a scalar wave on a map. But there's no scalar wave because a wave is propagating in a particular direction, but scalar has no direction. So it's kind of an oxymoron to me.
Okay.
Yeah. But the energy that they're talking about is genuine, and I think it has to do with electrostatics.
Okay. And then biomagnetic therapy would be something different though, right? So that would be...
Yeah, that would be placing pairs of magnets on chakra points or acupuncture or acupressure points on the body, and it affecting the passing blood in the veins and the arteries because the blood has iron in it, and iron moving creates an electric current, and magnets flow 90 degrees to an electric current, so it would affect it very slightly, just like the tiny ionized bubbles flowing in Dan Winter's magnetized water unit.
Okay.
It gets affected slightly by the magnet because it gets aligned slightly. So the theory is that by placing these pairs of magnets on certain points of the body, that it will help help the chi, help unblock the energy, or contribute to the bioelectric system aiding itself and healing you somehow. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I know the concept.
Okay.
And I have seen pictures before and after. I'm not sure if they are genuine, but I have seen claims that it works. So I'll give it a thumbs up till I hear otherwise.
Now, what would the Rodin coil have to do with that kind of therapy? Is that something that would be involved in that as well, or is that a completely different thing?
That is a different thing because a Rodin coil doesn't have a ferrous core. It doesn't have an iron core like an electromagnet. You could take a piece of iron, you wrap a coil of wire around the iron, and then when you connect the wire to a battery, the piece of iron becomes a magnet. The Rodin coil has a plastic donut. There is no iron core. So there's no magnet to a Rodin coil other than the magnetic field developed around the wire when you send an electric current through the wire. So you can, but the thing is it seems to generate a monopole anomaly at the center of the coil. It's not really, but it's an illusion of one. And I still, you can take a pole finder, and you can see that it only shows positive, or only shows north, or it only shows south. But I'm thinking the other pole is on the inside of the donut, and you can't stick the probe on the inside, so it gives the illusion that it's only one pole, because you can only test the outside.
Interesting. So the Rodin coil is essentially more of an amplifier in a sense?
It depends on how you use it. It's a coil, and a coil is a coil. Okay. But what do you use that coil for in what specific scenario? You can't just generalize a coil. Like a Tesla coil has specific windings and a specific size, and it's very specific for that purpose and that scenario. So it depends. But you can use the Rodin coil for a number of things. What I wanted to try to do is like grow a crystal inside of the Rodin coil while it's like electrostatically polarized, and then maybe use it as like a fishing lure, because if you put a magnet in the center, it becomes a speaker. Okay. And if you put a magnet in the center, the magnet will want to spin and bounce around. But if you prevent the magnet from spinning and bouncing around, the coil will act as a speaker.
Interesting.
So the wires will vibrate, and you can use it as a speaker. So if you use that in the water, you can play like whale sounds or dolphin sounds and scare sharks away or something. And you could probably play the noises of a feeding frenzy and attract a certain type of fish or something. So there's experiments to be done.
Cool. This isn't directly related, but I know the shape of the Rodin coil is a donut, and I'm curious, are you familiar with Michael Tellinger's work at all?
Yeah, I met him a couple times, but he does so much. You'd have to say, what part of his work.
Are you familiar with the donuts that he discovered? They're donut-shaped rocks, essentially.
Yeah, the stone ones?
Yeah.
That, I'm not sure what their purposes are or were, but some of them, I think, are made from geopolymer concrete, which is an ancient form of concrete, like what the Egyptians made the casting stones of the pyramids with. No heavy lifting involved. Ancient chemistry, and they made a concrete mixture and made what looks to be like natural stone, but it's a concrete mixture, and they shaped it into what they wanted. And people nowadays wonder how the heck people did it. So I think that's what they were. I think they were geopolymer. They were made from geopolymer. Their purpose, not sure.
Okay. Yeah, and you start to get into, when you start to talk about the pyramids and these types of things, you're starting to get into some more abstract worlds. But speaking a little bit about that, the pyramids and some theories I've heard around it are pretty interesting in regards to them being on ley lines and then potentially being used for wireless energy transfer.
Well, I have a unique perspective on the pyramids. I don't think that they are 4,500 years old. I think they're much, much older, maybe like 70, 80,000 years old.
Okay.
I think the Egyptians took credit for the pyramids and developed a society around the pyramids, and then formed their own hieroglyphics and then added to what was there. And then the pharaohs took credit for the building of it. And then one day somebody started questioning the pharaohs, and whoever questioned them was killed. That's why Ramses was killed. That's why King Tut was killed. And Khufu, or whoever was at the time, was challenged to, okay, well, if you're family and you know how the pyramids were built, then do it again. Mm-hmm. So he was challenged to do so, and for 20 years he tried, which they made the 3 measly small pyramids next to the large ones. Mm-hmm. And then everybody saw he was full of crap, and they had a major exodus, and everybody left. Not that there was 100,000 slaves lifting heavy stones. There was no heavy lifting. It was mainly, except for the granite, but the majority of the stones were poured from geopolymer concrete in place. That's why the joints are seamless and perfectly flat, because they poured a block with wooden molds, boards. It filled, it dried, and then they poured the next one next to it, the next one next to it. So everything was perfectly seamless.
Interesting. I like that theory. I think
But
that
for the wireless energy transfer, I'm not sure, because I've seen John Hutchison. He did a documentary years ago and showed how the Ark of the Covenant could be an electrostatic capacitor with a nuclear fuel housed inside of it. And there is a place in the Pyramid of Giza specific for the dimensions of what would be the Ark of the Covenant. So if it housed some nuclear material and some advanced technology, then the entire pyramid could potentially be electrostatically charged, because there is the difference between the limestone and the granite and the other stones that make it up, like an insulator and a conductor. So yeah, it technically could have been Party Central.
Yeah, I've heard some interesting theories around that, and that there was
Burning Man on steroids.
Yeah, and that there was potentially a gold cap as well that got taken,
and marble lining the entire outside.
Okay,
white marble.
Oh wow, I haven't heard that before.
Yeah.
Well, then I've heard too about incredibly large quartz crystal on the inside as well.
Ooh, yeah, that's part of the limestone is also crystal, but large quartz crystals itself. That would be interesting too.
Yeah, which I think is really fascinating. And then actually touching on that a little bit too, have you heard much about using quartz as hard drives and storing information within crystals? Do you know much about that? Or
I've heard about it. I don't know about it, so I can't really speak on it.
Okay.
I'm hopeful with it. I've seen what looks to be a clear crystalline CD, thin, and they say that they can imprint the data in it in 3D. So not just one layer like a CD, but they can do it embedded within it, and they can do like hundreds of, I don't even know what the next level, petabytes, hundreds of petabytes within one disk. That's like thousands of terabytes.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the potentials of that. Exploring those types of things, and also potentially, because in my mind, you have the potential of being able to build a quantum internet that would use the crystals themselves would be the servers, and you would quantum entangle. You would have a piece of that crystal in every device, and that would be quantum entangled to that main server, essentially.
I have a different theory on that one, but we wouldn't need the crystals for that.
Okay, I'd love to hear your theory on that.
I think the quantum computers will eventually be chemically based, not silicon. It'll be based on even still, it'd be faster than that, but probably be solid state initially. But then they'd have huge apparatus, like the original computers did. Huge, like it took 10 people to move the 5 megabyte hard drive into a huge room. That's how the quantum computers are going to initially be, until they can get them down to fitting them on the tip of a pin. And then that'll just, you won't need crystals. And whenever I don't really like to use the word quantum. I do so because other people know what it means. I'd rather use the term subatomic.
Okay.
Because to me, the word quantum is like magic.
Yeah.
You might as well just say ether or magic.
It becomes a catch-all phrase for a lot of things.
Exactly. Let's just push anything that's not understood into the quantum. So quantum computing. Okay. Well, what magic computing? What do you really mean? Subatomic computing? Like, it's a different form of computing. It's just making more ones and zeros, or a 1 and a 0.
Yeah, the 1 and the 0 simultaneously, essentially.
Yeah.
which I think is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Do you think that I'm curious about your thoughts about technology in general, and do you think that the technology that's being released publicly, like how far ahead do you think we really are?
Well, yeah, I think there's probably a secret space program, but the president has no clue about it, no access to it. CIA doesn't know about it, nor it's. You think the deep state is bad, man? We're talking beyond that. These players aren't even on the board. They have so much money and so much power and technology, but it's not relativity. I'll tell you that. They let everybody else flounder with the relativity and rockets and nukes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the. But everybody just anytime you suggest something different, they don't want to hear it. So, oh well. Let them have their batteries and rockets and all that.
Speaking a little bit on that, how familiar are you with kind of the theories around Tartaria and stuff like that?
Not really at all. I'm not familiar with that name.
Okay. There's some theories going around. I don't know if you've heard the term mud flood, but essentially that
mud butt. What?
Mud flood.
Oh yeah.
Essentially that within even the last 200 years, we had a lot of this technology kind of that we're referencing, a lot of the wireless technology, a lot of the Tesla coil technologies and these types of things. And
I like that stuff. Oh yeah.
And that's why a lot of these older buildings have a lot of these domes, like large domes. Usually it's copper or some sort of other material that would be able to be used to help with the kind of wireless grid, essentially. And that there's a whole theory about that there was and I'm not an expert on this by any means, but I just find it fascinating, that there was essentially a global empire called Tartary. And Tartary is you can look back and find it, and it was initially, I guess, came from areas around Russia. But they're saying that there is Tartarian architecture, and that the architecture is still around today, and that it's a lot of these buildings that have larger doors, giant pillars, and these types of things that even today would be kind of difficult to build a lot of these more ancient buildings.
Yeah.
And there's theories that they kind of have, even as recent as like the 1890s or the late 1800s, we had this technology available to us, and certain groups of people, I'm not sure who, came in and kind of deleted them from history, essentially.
That absolutely, yes.
So I think it's really fascinating.
You think losing the Library of Alexandria is bad? Yeah. But Emperor Qin, Qin, in China, he destroyed 98 out of 100 schools of thought.
Oh, wow.
The only two that remained were Confucianism and legalism.
Wow.
Everything else was absolutely wiped out. Every philosophy, every technology, astronomy, everything. It just like Hitler's book burning to the extreme, like Library of Alexandria on steroids. This guy was just the worst.
Yeah, it's I'm fascinated by it. It's also interesting too, because there's theories, and I appreciate you saying that the pyramids are potentially a lot older than we realize, but there's theories though that I think are interesting that say that they're even not nearly as old as we say they are, and that maybe even in the last like 500 to 1,000 years, a lot of this stuff was essentially potentially created. And
there's no mention of the pyramids in the Bible.
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's some theories about that as well. Is that essentially our histories have been so fucked with.
Yeah. He who wins the wars writes the history books.
Yeah, it's his story, not ours. But yeah, I've always been really interested in that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm curious, are there any kind of interesting theories or concepts that you've heard recently that have really piqued your interest, or that you're really kind of just beginning to dive into at all? Or
yeah. Probably need another show on that one, man. But yeah, the whole concept of time and light and space, that's what like I've been really getting into last like 2 years. Incredibly booming leaps of thought due to the work of Dr. Edward Dowdy and some other key players, which have helped finally break through in thought and what the heck is going on. So it's like one thing I'd like to mention, seems crazy, but everything that you see, everything that Hubble has captured, all the stars, all the galaxies, we're all looking at it in real time as it is happening right now. Everything you see is happening now. You can never look into the past.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There's major justification for that. There's an entire mathematical consequence which dictates so. Everybody knows relativity and Lorentz, but nobody knows the opposing argument and the opposing scenario, which is its opposite. And that's what I've been interested in.
So do you think that, well, first off, have you heard of Project Looking Glass?
I have, and I don't know what to make of it now. Because all of that is under the assumption that space and time is connected and light and gravity is connected. And if you warp them, you could look into the past. Mm-hmm. I think there is an Akashic record, but I don't think that is accessible by the military. I think people give the military and the man, a lot more credit than they actually have. And then they play on that. So a lot of people they think they have the power of God, and all they have to do is say nothing, and people will still assume it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they give them a little too much credit. These guys are idiots.
That is a good point. And
when they kick in my door, I'll tell them that to their face.
Yeah. I mean, and that's definitely playing out really heavily right now in the world. So we can kind of see it firsthand, these people, the power that we've given them, essentially.
Yeah, the illusion of power. Mm-hmm. Do indeed have power, but they're given the illusion of more power than they have.
Yeah, and the narratives around the Illuminati or these kinds of like unknown forces at play.
Yeah, where's the application, man? I'm trying to join up now, man. I could use some help. This is crazy. I couldn't even join if I wanted to.
Yeah. Pretty interesting.
It's a giant club and we ain't in it.
Yeah, and it's fascinating too when we're presented with these choices of leaders, and there's people like you that exist. There's other brilliant, incredibly brilliant human beings out there that have way more awareness in regards to our history and the potentiality for our future. And it's just kind of shocking to me that it's like, this is the best we have. Like, what is this?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm. Don't put me in a special box. I spread the illusion of awareness and intelligence here too, man. I'm not all I'm cracked out to be. I'm just a guy who collected a bunch of information, and I have the ability apparently to simplify it. So that's what I try to do.
Yeah, which I think is definitely needed, especially as you're touching on a lot of very abstract for many people. I guess abstract thoughts.
Yeah.
And
I'm used to getting laughs, and then if they stick with it, those laughs turn to shock, and then they turn to those little heart emojis. You got to give them time.
Yeah. Have you studied much? Like you're mentioning certain things. Like, have you studied much into like alchemy and the more ancient kind of teachings, or?
I consider chemistry itself as alchemy.
Okay.
And you know, the best thing that we could probably do right now is the Sapphire Project, which is a branch of the electric universe. I don't agree with everything in the electric universe. I like the concepts, but not everything. But the Sapphire Project, SAFIRE, that has potential. And what it does is it has a closed chamber with a spherical electrode, and they have hydrogen inside the chamber, and they electrostatically charge the electrode, and it develops double layers of plasma, like a standing wave of concentric shells of plasma around the electrode. In those standing waves is trapped heat equal to 3 million degrees. Now, the surface of the electrode itself is about 500 degrees Kelvin. Outside of those plasma shells is the other way around. The surface of the electrode is 1,000 degrees Kelvin. Outside of the plasma shells is 500 degrees Kelvin, but trapped in between is 3 million degrees. And that shouldn't be. And what happens to elements inside of that trapped zone is that they transmute. The hydrogen becomes like calcium and neodymium and heavier elements and iron and stuff. Like it just transmutes in that double layer extreme zone from extreme voltage and heat and pressure. But not like atmospheric pressure, like at the bottom of the ocean. Like it can just be voltage pressure, and it's a different phenomenon, and that is the closest thing to alchemy that I have seen, where you can transmute elements. And a benefit of that is nuclear remediation, getting rid of the harmful radiation. You can reverse nuclear radiation, and John Searle's technology can do the same. That's another major aspect, is just by powering homes, it can get rid of Chernobyl, the harmful radiation.
That's wild.
And so can Sapphire, by putting the nuclear materials, the spent waste, within that plasma zone. It will remediate and transmute into different elements. And in doing so, will generate a massive amount of heat, and then you can use that heat to power things also. So that's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, is producing heat, a multi-trillion-dollar industry for getting rid of nuclear radiation, and a multi-trillion-dollar industry for powering people's homes, all of which can be done by these devices.
And I feel like the Sapphire Project has a really, at least from what I've seen with it, it has a pretty good chance of seeing the light of day in the near future.
Well, it is. It is in the light of day, because we have the internet now, and because it is so widely spread on so many channels and being discussed. It is in the light of day, but we want to see it practically used and being able to purchase it and stuff like that. That's what people really mean by light of day, being an end user.
Yeah.
But they're on a good course.
Well, and part of what
even though the Arion technology is funded, there's like, I think there's links to George Soros, or so I've heard a claim that there's like, so there's like, you heard that too?
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. I was like, well, that's why.
At this point, I don't care if it's an oil baron, if it's George Soros himself. I don't care. Let's get this stuff funded, and then just flip it and turn it right back on them.
Yeah, exactly.
Take their money. Do it.
Yeah, exactly. All for it. I'm all for the.
Well, I'm all for their money. That's about it.
Well, yeah, I'm for building a better world, and however we have to do it, let's do it. And
mud wall or whatever it's called. Got to get dirty.
Awesome. How much more time do you have? Or
We got like 15 minutes or something.
okay.
Oh, I
Cool.
see. We got crypto on here.
Yeah, you want to touch a little bit on cryptocurrencies and what's going
Never
on?
heard of it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. There's a guy named Milton Friedman. I call him Cryptodamus. Like in 1991 or 93, this guy talked about an e-currency and an internet money that would be used to exchange goods, and it would be like internet money. This guy, like he said, it was going to be a non-taxable, and it would be a huge problem for governments. Back in like the early 90s.
Wow. Do you?
I'm very into the concept of the Bitcoin and I was into the IOTA and EOS, but the whole market took a crap, so everything has to be back to the drawing board again.
Yeah, well,
Bitcoin's always king, though.
Yeah, I still see EOS as being the best technology, but the way that they rolled everything out, I think, was a huge mistake. I think that Block One, having the resources that it has kind of shit the bed on this. I'm just like, okay.
I like Brock. I like Brock as a person because he's interested in Chester. Oh man, what's his name? The EOS symbol.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know where he got that from?
I forget that guy's name, but yeah, from that geometric shape that he created.
Yeah, exactly, the seven-sided geometric shape. I got to meet him and go to his conferences a couple times.
Yeah, I've watched.
I like Brock, but the SEG a couple years ago, we had some guys establish a cryptocurrency coin with our technology, and it's called the UEC coin, the Universal Energy Coin. Okay. You go to uec.io. Actually, I'm going to put that in here. UEC.io. There you go. In the chat. I didn't even link it. But it has 2 videos in there with introduction to the technology and the potential with the hash graph or the blockchain or whatever is used. But the energy can be monitored and the units can be fully monitored. Everything can be regulated and there's no fear. I mean, this stuff is independence. You can be your own bank. You can take the power out of their hands and put it into your hands, just as long as, they don't manipulate the market too much, which they obviously have done. But it just gives us another opportunity to have a safe asset that's kind of untaxable, untouchable for now.
Yeah, for now. I mean, we are definitely getting to a turning point as far as the global economy is concerned, and I don't see the U.S. dollar as holding on for very much longer.
No. Another thing, these technologies can be used to power mining operations. So, like, imagine being off the grid with a mining operation generating Bitcoin and then selling it back. Then you could sell the electricity back to the grid, and you can sell the coins back to the market.
Mm-hmm. It's actually something that I was exploring for a while. In different ways to create, essentially decentralized systems of abundance. Because I feel like we've spent so many years, not only through the technological suppression, but the cultural and psychological as well, in this mindset of scarcity.
I mean, there's nothing backing the fiat currency we use now, and that's the whole point of the crypto, at least some of them, the Bitcoin. It's like when you have a light bulb connected to an alternator, and then you ride your bicycle, and as you pedal, the light bulb glows. Right? So you're doing an amount of real work, and it is producing an amount of electricity. Well, instead of powering that light bulb, you can power a computer to do computations to make coins. And that real world work is representative of a real amount of electricity. So rather than having fiat currency and money and paper money and coins, we could have electricity and power itself as the currency. And the amount of energy that you generate will determine how much money that you have and what you can buy in the market and use. So, and that's what is huge, is that it's like a moneymaker. It's like the parable of the pipeline. You can work hard every day carrying buckets of water to and from the lake, or you can spend your time building, a ramp system so that you can siphon the lake and bring it to your house. And exactly. that's the whole point with the crypto. It's like you're becoming your own bank, and you can become energy independent with residual money. And that's the whole point. You don't have to work day by day.
Yeah, which I think is super important. I'm starting to explore as well. Like I know that you're on Steemit as well, but I think what they've done with that was really fascinating. And I see that as being a potential to be used in all sorts of other avenues, such as music and video streaming and all these different things.
It could be the new MySpace.
Essentially, yeah. So, and the coolest part about it is, like, me as a artist or me as a consumer, like, both people get paid. Both people benefit from the creation of that electricity or that data.
Yeah, if you get traffic within that first week, I make like 2 to 15 cents per post. Nobody knows about me.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, there's obviously layers to it that have to be fixed, but I still think it's really powerful.
Yeah, I love the concept. And it's the only place where I can post an article where, as you read and scroll, you can see the images and animated images as you're reading to get real-time visualization. You don't have to click a link for some of it. It's like you're scrolling and you get something moving as you say, oh, okay, that's what he's talking about. It's like I love Steemit for that.
Yeah, that was something definitely that they did really well.
Oh yeah.
It was made me think of, you mentioned powering stuff with the bicycle. Are you familiar with the Hans-free electric bike that he's doing? A dude named Manoj. Is it Manoj Bhargava? He's like the creator.
Don't say Nikki.
No, Manoj Bhargava. He was like the creator of 5 Hour Energy.
What? No, I have not heard of that.
Yeah, he started essentially it's just a bike that can create he says 2 hours of riding, you get about a 10 kilowatt hour output.
I think I've seen a picture of that. Some big obscene mechanical device with some big wheel in his garage, and it's like it would take up the size of a car in your garage. Yeah, you could pedal it, but
that might be the older one. But I could send you a picture of it.
You got to be Chuck Norris just to like start it up to like power your house.
But yeah, I thought that was a really interesting concept too. And seeing is like you were saying earlier a little bit, is like you can create these layers, I think, of different forms of sustainability, and kind of merging the generators with the human powered with the solar powered and all of these different types of things to kind of create a more off the grid world.
I thought the concept of a gym where you use the equipment, but each motion you do powers a battery. So like you're like rowing a boat, but you're powering a battery and charging a battery at the same time. So like at the end of the day, you get a card and you can like have energy back or something, like at a car charging station or something. You get like free minutes or something at a, energy in, energy out.
It makes me think of that. I don't know if you're familiar with that Black Mirror episode.
I'm ashamed I haven't seen Black Mirror, bro.
Oh no, it's fine.
Everybody keeps talking about it. I feel left out because I haven't seen it.
It is what
I know
it
the
is.
concepts though.
Well, there's an episode where there's like essentially a slave race of people who their entire lives are just riding these bikes, and the bikes power the rest of the world for everyone else.
Sounds like an episode of Rick and Morty.
Yeah, it's kind of similar.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, with the his battery when he goes in his battery.
Yeah, and everybody's stepping on the things over.
Yeah, yeah. It's a pretty good episode. Awesome. Is there anything else on your mind that you'd like to share with people at this moment?
Yeah, plenty, but it'd take another 12 hours, man. We got to do another show. This very easy format. I like talking with you. We got to do this again, please.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. I'd love to.
Right on. Excellent,
right.
Man.
Well,
thank you for the time.
Yeah, thanks for joining me, and thanks for your insight and into all these different topics.
It's been like over a year and a half, I think, since maybe even 2 years since I've had a radio thing or a blog or whatever. Even somebody talk to me. 2 years I haven't talked to him.
Oh wow. Well, I appreciate you coming on here.
Well, thank you, man. I'm a hermit now. Help me. Right on, man. Thank you guys, and thank you for listening. And we'll do another talk.
Yeah, sounds great, man.